This is Lance from Lance's Auto Vlog, and I'm back with a new video. So I decided to do another video on how to set up an Audison APF8.9bit. So I'm gonna show you the step-by-step ways to set up an AP8.9bit on your PC with the software. So there's gonna be a couple things I'm gonna cover on the instructions on step-by-step. Let's start off by telling you I'm using a OEM head unit. OEM head unit from Ford. This is a 2017 Ford F-150 OEM head unit. I have the Prima AP1 tweeters, the Prima 6x9s in the door, no center channel from the factory. I got a rear Audison 10-inch powered sub and the rear Prima 6.5-inch coax, so the APX 6.5-bit, I mean 6.5 coaxials, the 6x9 AP 6.9s and the AP1s. And like I said, I'm gonna show you how to set up your APF 8.9-bit F8.9-bit on the PC with this particular setup. Now the things I'm not gonna test, which I've already tested in the past, but I haven't shown a video on it, but I have tested, is how much input signal I'm gonna give it from the radio and then move on from there. So here's the steps on how to set it up in the software and what you will see. So we're gonna first start off, I've already done a tune on this car. So I'm gonna first start off by doing the configuration wizard. So you launch the software in this device settings, and it's gonna come up with configuration wizard. And this is just the start off point where you're gonna begin at. Then you hit the start button here, and you're gonna pick how your inputs are gonna be mapped coming into the device. So if you're running high level or low level, there's gonna be multiple ways you can actually see the input. So these are basically telling you have input 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and so on. So 1 being front and rear, which in this case would be front and rear because of the car. 2 being front, rear, and sub. So if you have a front input, a rear input, and 2 sub inputs, hence the 2. Then you have number 3, which is front, rear. So let me click on that so you have an idea. Front, rear, and sub left and right. So you have front left, front right, rear left, rear right, sub left, sub right. And this one here would be 1 sub, what's 1 mono input sub. So all these ranges, all these are basically saying is that you have front full range, so you have 20 to 20, and then you have rear full range, and then a mono subwoofer input on for 5. Number 3 would be the same thing, front left and right full range, rear left and right full range, 5 subwoofer left, 6 subwoofer right. And then you have 4, which would be front full range 1 and 2, rear full range 3 and 4, 5 center if you had a full center input, whatever that center input would be. It doesn't have to be full range, but it's just saying center, and 6 being sub. And then if you have a system that only has front inputs, full range left and right, so I'm saying full range, no two-way, no nothing, just completely full range front. And then you got 6, which is front left tweeter and front right tweeter. So if you had independent tweeter inputs physically, and you had independent left and right woofers inputs for the doors, and then you have rear left and right full range, that's number 6. And then number 7 would be two-way front tweeters, left tweeter, right tweeter, left mid bass woofer, right mid bass woofer, and then 5 and 6 being not used. And then you have 7, which would be front left tweeter, front right tweeters on 1 and 2, front left door speaker, front right door speaker on 3 and 4, and you have subwoofer left and subwoofer right. So this is bass only. And then you have number 9, which would be front left tweeter, front right tweeter, front left woofer, front right woofer, and an independent subwoofer mono. And then you have 10, front left tweeter, front right tweeter, And these are all inputs. This is not even the output. This is just mapping the input. So you got front left tweeter, front right tweeter, front left woofer, rear front right woofer, center and sub. And then you got some of those cars that have a three-way system in the front only because it has 6 inputs. Front left, front right tweeter, front left, front right mid input, and front left and front right mid bass woofer. And then you have the turn on for the art. So if you're doing a car and you don't have a remote turn on and you have a DC offset, this is what the art chip's for. And my particular truck, this is the F-150, it's gonna be front left and front right, full range inputs. So 5 and 6 are not being used. And then you also have the derived. So what does derived sub mean? If you want a derived sub, you can either have it from the front or the rear or independent sub. In my case, I'm going front. So everything that's coming off the front signal will base the subs off it. So if you want to be able to fade the subs out, basically all you do is fade it out of the rear and the subs would go away. And vice versa if you did rear or both. So depending on if you have front and rear, if you don't want to lose the bass at all, you can put it on front if you want to lose the bass, or rear if you want to lose the bass, or front and sub if you don't want to lose bass at all. So I'm gonna do front. Then I'm gonna go next. So here's the next start part of it. So you need to have the Audison CD or the tracks based on what's from that disc. So you're gonna have what they call a 0 dB reference setup, which means that it won't distort for anything on the analog inputs. So if you're taking all your information from analog, not digital, analog, and you want it to sound like true as can be for like someone who does classical music or something like that doesn't want any distortion, which we know for a fact everybody who lives in America is typically, I wouldn't say everybody, I say 90% of the consumers out there want it loud and want to have a little bit of distortion. So you want to have a little bit of distortion, you want to go to musical setup. Now what that does is it count your input for your audio and gives you a little bit of distortion, or it picks it up and allows it to have 3B louder than what it normally would be. So you want to click that box or click the other one, whatever one works for you, and go next. Now you can also skip this. So if you're doing if you're doing optical and you don't even have to go through this process. You can just completely skip it. Or if you have analog input, you can skip it as well. I like to use it when I set up this amp, so I always recommend doing it. And then you go next. Now what this is gonna do is it's gonna read whatever signal's coming out of your audio source, and it's gonna take that signal and it's gonna analyze it and see what it's doing. In that process of analyzation, it's gonna give you everything possible as far as what is reading from your inputs. Now I've gone as far as to test this radio for input, so about 25 is where I'm normally at, and I know it doesn't distort, doesn't do any weird crackle and pops and anything like that, so I play it this loud. So it's at 25 on the radio, it's at sine sweep 0 dB, so that's track 1, and it's just gonna analyze it. Now this is pretty quick. So then you get all the green lights. So depending on how many inputs you have, if you have 6 inputs, you should have 6 green lights. If you have 2 inputs, 2 green lights. In this case, it's 4. So I have 4 green lights. If you get any time you see red, that means you're overpowering. I shouldn't say overpowering. I should say you're clipping the input section, and you want to turn your radio down a little bit or test it depending on what you're doing. Now, if you get no lights, that means you're getting no signal or low signal. In this case, I know 5 and 6 has 0 signal. So now I can go next. So now I want to put it on track 2. As you can see, it switched to track 2 because I have the CD. Let's all repeat, sorry. So I go to track 2, and it's pink noise. Now if I go next, I hit go, it's going to analyze the input of the unit. Now this part takes the longest. And there's a reason why it takes the longest. It's because it's analyzed all inputs on the system itself. So it's going to analyze everything on the input side and tell me what the actual system's reading. Now, is it true to form? Somewhat. But it's going to be close. So when you're reading it, it's just doing a process. It's going to do front left, front right, rear left, rear right. It's going to say center. It's going to say sub. Even though you might have the input, it's doing that analyzation. this does take the longest.
Now it's done. So you can actually go back and go through all the input analysis if you want to by using these arrows. If you really want to see, you can go next, or you can go back. I'm going to go next, and it tells you this head unit is equalized, de-equalization activation. De-equalization is activated. So I think in this case, I think I have my radio treble turned up on the radio, so that's going to pick that up. So if I go next, it's going to tell you all the inputs and how you can bridge them. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and you have 9 as a pre-out. So you go next. Now, as long as the car's red, it won't let you go to the next step. So once you allocate your speakers, like I said before, you got front left, front right tweeters, front left and front right mid bass, left rear full range, right rear full range, and then you have a sub being the 9th channel. So you can do a couple things. You can click on the tweeters and click on the drivers, and if you want to bridge those channels, you hit the X box here, okay? Or you want them to be the same channel, I should say, not necessarily bridged. So if you want them to be the exact same channel tied into tweeter and the mid, by clicking this thing, it ties them together. In my case, I'm not doing it that way. Now you can also do tweeter and mid right here, and you can click these together, and those would be a channel. So if you want a tweeter and mid and you don't want to have to deal with crossovers too much, you could deal it that way if you're really not familiar with DSPs and DSP crossovers. Or you can unclick that. And what I did is I bridged the mid bass drivers so they have more power. So by clicking this here, that allows you to bridge 2 channels into 1. So this is an 8-channel DSP with a pre-out. So I'm going to make it a 6-channel output. So when I do my rears, I'm going to click both speakers. Now, some people go, why would you click both speakers? You can just click one. Because if you click one speaker, you'll have to go into the expert mode and make it however you want to make as far as crossover. But if you click both speakers, it'll be full range coming out of the box. You don't have to make any changes other than maybe a crossover point. So if you forget, you don't have to deal with it. But if you don't, you'll have to go back and remind yourself to click that. And as you can see, it sees 8 channels here with 1 bridge, and the car's red. So if I try to go, it won't let me go to the next steps. So I want to link the rear channels together for the rear speakers, so the car will be green. So now I also want to do my sub. So if I click here, that'll give me my 9th channel. So as you can see, I have 1, 2, then I have the mid basses bridge, so that's 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, and then I have my rear speakers are 7 and 8, and then I have an output for 9. So the car is green. If I try to add any other speakers, it's going to turn red no matter what I do. It won't let me move on to the next step. So if I want to move to the next step, I got to have a green car all the way across the board. So now I can go next. Now I get to allocate what my channels are coming out of the DSP. You can make up any combination. I have a weird thing about setting up DSPs. When I set them up, I like to make them simple. I do tweeters, or I do my front far whatever speaker it is 1, and then my far front right speaker 2, and I go my closest driver. So if it's a mid-range, if it was a 3-way, it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In this case, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 bridge, 5, 6 bridge, 7, 8 rear, and 9 being pre-out. So I have to change these by using the arrows. So if I go down to 1, that's first front left tweeter, because that's how I wired it. 2 front right tweeter. Now as you can see, there's 1 and 2 together. That means this bridge. It sees a bridge channel. 3, 4 bridge, 5, 6 bridge, and I have a green car. It'll let me go move on to the next step. Period. If at any time this is green, it will not let you move on. So then you go next, and then you go finish. So right now, what it's doing is basically applying everything I did for the input setup and the output setup. So the beginning is the input, so whatever I'm doing going into the DSP, and the end is how I'm setting up the output. So as you can see, the audio came up. It did a pre-set up EQ for pre-set up audio setup for the inputs for each channel. So I got front tweeter, it's got a crossover already. These are predetermined. And then you got bridge 5 and 6, which you can see 3 and 4, 5 and 6, left front, right front, and you can see by the car, it's also labeled there. And it gives you a basic crossover point. And then the same for the rear, it says full range. Now if I had just done tweeter, it would just do a tweeter crossover. If I done mid, it would have done a bandpass crossover. So this gives me the freedom to change to all these crossover points that I want. So if I want to be full range, I can. If I want to change the high pass, low pass, I can. And then I have the sub. Now the sub is pre-set up at a 80 hertz coming out of the box, and everything's set up. Now, if I want everything to stay the way it is, I can just go to device settings and go to finalize and finalize it. Finalizing locks in all memories. If you do not do that step, it will not remember anything you did, period. So if I exit out of here right now, it'll revert back whatever I did in the past. So if I go here and go, okay, let's go exit and close it out, it'll ask me, do I want to finalize? So it won't let you do it unless you decide not to do it. So in this case, I already have everything pre-tuned before, but I'm just giving you a step-by-step instruction on how to set up an APF8.9-bit, and you should be good to go. So I'm not going to finalize any of this. I'm just going to say no, and it's going to revert back to whatever I had in the past. Okay. Now if I go back to my APF, I launch the software one more time. It's just going to read the device, and whatever I did in the past, because I didn't finalize it, will be there still.